This is Castle 1. Race officer speaking.
Left right is on boundary up ahead, 35 seconds out.
A bit lower and faster here.
That's a good one, Jimmy.
Still gaining on the lane line there.
We're looking at 10-5, 42. Matching him on the boundary, yeah, copy.
Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome back to part 2 as we preview the 37th America's Cup. As you'll know from part 1, I've been in Barcelona talking to all the teams, now fully established and training out on the waters that in just a matter of weeks will be the racetrack as racing finally gets underway. If you haven't listened to part 1, then spin back and take that in first. If you have, we've got another extended edition right here as we look forward to the racing. Before we pick things up in Barcelona, if you're enjoying the podcast, then do head over and show your support at buymeacoffee.com/sailing podcast. It's really easy to use, and your help allows us to stay ad-free and to keep on delivering these uninterrupted stories. So a huge thank you for the coffees. It really does make a difference. I spent a week recording this edition over in Barcelona, and I can tell you now, with just over a month to go until things get very real, the atmosphere in Barcelona is really hotting up. The teams are all fully established in their bases around the marina, and every day there's giant flags flying from each of their cranes, denoting which boat is out on the water. And out off the beach almost every afternoon, the AC-75s are flying around in the classic Barcelona sea breeze. It looks incredible. It's going to be a real spectacle. In part 1, I caught up with Dan Bernasconi from Emirates Team New Zealand, Francesco Bruni and Philippe Presti from Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, and with Youth and Women's America's Cup organiser Abby Ela. And this edition, well, the insights continue. From Orient Express Racing Team, we talk to team CEO Bruno Dubois. We catch up with podcast regular, co-helm on American Magic Tom Slingsby. And we talk to Swiss rowing Olympian Barnaby Delars about life as an America's Cup cycler. Barnaby cycling for Alinghi Red Bull Racing, of course. But in this edition, we kick things off back in the UK, just north of London, at the home of the Mercedes F1 team. The team shares a design office with AC37's official challenger of record, INEOS Britannia. And I was obviously there to speak to America's Cup design guru, INEOS's lead designer, Martin Fischer.
The speeds are just unbelievable. Upwind, we are reaching 40 knots now. That was even 10 years ago, that was unthinkable.
We don't know yet how the other boats are. We know one thing is we don't have a lemon, that's for sure.
The cat's out of the bag now, you can totally talk about it, but we found that we were able to get a much lower volume hull by going recumbent cyclists and bringing everyone down.
We are, endurance-wise and power-wise, some of the fittest athletes out there.
When Emirates Team New Zealand lifted the oldest trophy in world sport back in 2017, they did so having won in a boat that was packed full of innovative design decisions. In a regatta that notoriously favours the defender, Team New Zealand beat Oracle Team USA 7 points to 1. Under Dan Bernasconi, their design team had significantly over-delivered. As the new defender, Team New Zealand then embarked on a bold new class of boat, combining the high-speed, cutting-edge world of foiling with the traditions of the past, the America's Cup monohull. It was a massive design challenge, but Dan Bernasconi and his team created a remarkable yacht. We first saw the AC-75 in the last Cup in Auckland, and now in Barcelona, we are witnessing their evolution. As lead design at Emirates Team New Zealand, Dan Bernasconi has played a pivotal role in where the sport now sits. At the pinnacle of technical excellence, I caught up with him at the team base in Barcelona. Martin Fischer back on the podcast. Thanks for joining us. We're based here in Brackley, obviously. I mean, it's amazing here, isn't it? I mean, just describe it for our listeners. Tell our listeners, where we are and what goes on here.
Well, we are in Brackley. It's probably the point the furthest away from the sea in England or in the UK even. But we are here because the Mercedes factory is here. And as you may know, we have a very close partnership with the Mercedes Formula One team. And that's the reason why we are here. So we are in their offices. We work together with them, with their engineers. We share the work, and that's the reason why we are here.
I mean, I arrived here at lunchtime, so I guess there was lots of people around, but it is massive, isn't it? Just describe the operation.
Yeah, it's a very big facility. So in total there are about 1,200 people working here. The campus is, I don't know how big it is, but it's big. It takes 10 minutes to walk from one end to the other. There are I don't know how many buildings, 6 or 7 main buildings plus parking lots and so on. So it's a massive facility, way bigger than anything we are used to in the America's Cup. But well, it's Formula One, so it's another order of magnitude. It's almost 10. Let's say a typical or big Formula One team is around 10 times bigger than a big America's Cup team, and that's what we see here. It's really massive. There are the facilities we have here, the equipment and everything. It's quite mind blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, even just arriving today. We'll discuss the Formula One relationship a little later, but before we do, Martin, let's just catch up on your thoughts about how things are looking. I mean, it must be such a nervous time for all the design teams. The boats have all been launched, most of them commissioned, and you get to see what everyone has been thinking. I mean, how nervous is this period, and what are your thoughts on the rest of the fleet?
Yeah, so I would say it has settled down a little bit. I was much more nervous before we saw the other boats, so that was really very exciting to every day to see when the new boats launched, and then trying to gather as much information as possible. So now it has settled down a little bit because we got used, let's say, to the other boats, how they look like. We had time to analyze them as much as we can. Of course, there are limits to it, but obviously we took plenty of photos. Not we, but from the Common Recon program, we got plenty of photos, and actually good photos, and analyzed as much as we could the strong points and the weak points of the other boats. And so all this, just to say, all this has settled down a bit, but we are now discovering more and more the performance-wise, the strong and the weak points. Of course, we cannot race against the others, but by looking at them on the water, you get an impression. You can see whether they're well locked in, whether they're stable or unstable, things like that. So we get more and more an idea of where the others are and where we are with respect to them.
I know there's still a little bit to go. I'm talking to you just in the middle of June here, but what are your thoughts on the rest of the fleet? The initial thinking on what you're going to...
It's very difficult to say. So I don't think there's any weak competitor. They are all up to the level, I would say. I expect really close racing, closer than last time in Auckland. So last time in Auckland was the first round of this of the AC75 rule. Now it's the second one. And even though the boats have not completely converged, you can see that the platforms, for instance, they look quite different. But on other aspects, we see some sort of convergence. So with the foils, it seems that all the teams went more or less in the same direction. Also with the rig layout, last time the Kiwis, so Team New Zealand had a very different rig layout. This time my impression is that we are much closer. So there are some areas where the teams converged, and therefore I expect that racing will be closer than it was last time.
That's an exciting prospect.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Challenger of record this time around, Martin, like last time with
yeah.
Luna Rossa. From the design team perspective, what added aspect to a campaign does being Challenger of record bring?
There's a little bit, but not really much. It's mainly at the beginning when the Challenge of Record, as you know, negotiates the rules and the protocol and the class rules and the racing rules with the defender, and of course that gives us that gives some power to the Challenge of Record. But once that is done, so once the framework is set, there's not really an advantage there. Well, there are a few little things. There are some aspects in the rules where we have a veto right. So we and the defender, it's mainly on safety things and on one design parts, but that's very, very limited. And so far, neither Team New Zealand, neither Team New Zealand nor us have used that right. So it's not a big thing. At the beginning, yes, definitely. That's an advantage. Also, you know the framework a little bit earlier, or at least you know the direction in which it will go a little bit earlier, but that's not a huge advantage, I would say.
Just remind our listeners, Martin, what are the key changes in that class rule from Auckland to now, and why have those changes been made?
So there were quite a few changes between the AC36 and now. The main changes were we reduced the weight by about 800 to 900 kilos. That came through a reduction of crew from 11 to 8 and through a reduction of the ballast in the foils. Then we increased the foil span from 4 meters to 4.5 meters. I'll come to that later why we did that. We opened up the rules on feedback for the control systems. We removed the running backstays, the runners, from the rig. We allowed a self-tacking jib, and this time also cyclists are permitted or allowed. Last time only grinders were allowed. And the reasons for all this were, first of all, we wanted to improve the takeoff performance. So last time we saw several races in Auckland when boats struggled to take off, but this is not really racing, so we wanted to avoid that. Therefore, we decreased the weight of the boats, and we increased the foil span. Both aspects were made to make takeoff easier. But to decrease the boat weight, that was not that easy. And one way to do it was to reduce the crew from 11 to 8. So that's a significant reduction in weight. But then, in order to be able to sail the boat with 8 people only, we had to change on one side, the energy production. So that's why we allowed cyclists. A cycler can produce more energy than a grinder with his arms. That was one aspect. And on the other side, we had to reduce the energy consumption or the energy need, the need for energy in maneuvers, and therefore we removed the running backstays and we allowed a self-taking jib. So in the end, it's all, I would say all these changes are coherent and they were made to improve the takeoff performance. And then the last aspect is was on the rules on the feedback rules for the control systems. So during the first iteration of this class rule of the AC75, we were very afraid that teams would find a way through clever feedback, even mechanical feedback, to somehow control the boat through a kind of mechanical or hydraulic computer. And in order to avoid that, because we want competition between sailors, not between autopilots, and to be sure that there wouldn't be a loophole, the rules last time were extremely restrictive on feedbacks. So literally everything was forbidden. And this time we were a bit more confident that we knew where the potential loopholes were, and therefore the rules were opened up a little bit to make sailing the boats easier and to get in line with common practice or best practice on normal high performance racing yachts. For instance, last time it was not allowed to have an automatic link between the main traveler and the jib traveler. This time that's allowed, and there are several other aspects of that. So that doesn't show from outside, but these linkages between different control functions, they will allow to sail the boat much better and will make life a little bit easier.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
You've been very busy. I mean, you mentioned the control systems also. What we don't see that as the viewer. What can you tell us there?
So the rules on the control systems in general are very delicate, and already last time that was a big issue. What we want a real sailboat race between sailors. Yeah, and therefore we don't want that the boat is controlled by an autopilot or by a computer. And of course, it's easy to ban a computer or to make sure that you cannot use that. But you could, through clever feedback systems, you could come up with something that is a little bit like a mechanical computer. So with tricky connections and so on. And last time, because we were very afraid that some teams would find loopholes in that set of rules. Last time the rules were very, very strict, so feedback was almost totally banned. And this time the rules are a bit more open, so there's some feedback allowed, but it's still very, very restrictive. But there's more feedback allowed than last time because we felt a bit safer. We thought we knew, or we think we thought we knew where the loopholes were, and there were a few loopholes closed, and other options were opened up. For instance, last time it was not allowed to move the main sheet traveler and the jib traveler simultaneously. You had to do it separately. This time you are allowed to do that simultaneously, and that's on any sailing boat you would do that. So it's mainly that we aligned the rules with what is common practice on high-level racing yachts.
Interesting. Right, obviously there has been much chat about the collaboration with the F1 design set up here at Mercedes. I mean, firstly, explain broadly what the relationship is between the two design teams.
So the relationship is such that we don't have two design teams. It's one design team, and in that design team, there are Mercedes people and there are INEOS Britannia people. If you walk into the office, you won't be able to say who is Mercedes and who is INEOS Britannia. When you walked in here, you saw people, and it's half there. So it is not that we have two design teams. It is really that we work together. And we are a single design team with expertise from Formula One and expertise from sailing, and we try to merge that in order to get the best out of two worlds.
And what aspects of the design, what areas do you think have the F1 design team had the most input in?
So in our case, the F1 the F1 people had a big influence on the aerodynamics. So they worked really a lot on the aerodynamics of the whole package. So of the sails, but also of the hull, of the interaction between the sails and the hull with the water surface. That was a big, or has been a big area. And then also in the control systems, so software development for the control systems, hydraulics, and also mechanical systems. The control of the foils is very complex, and the foils are tiny. Oh, well, they're not tiny, they're big, but it is difficult to get the control systems in there, and that requires a high level of knowledge on mechanical systems. And that's where the experience of the Formula One people really helped us. but also of course in all other aspects. It is actually, I think it's always very useful or very helpful if you work with people who come from another field, because if you explain things to them that seem to be clear, then they may come up with another idea, with another view, and that's very helpful. And we had that on several occasions. So if you have been so long into this kind of work, then there's a danger that you get blind for some aspects of it, and bringing people, really experienced people, clever people from a completely different field into this process really helps. They question why do you do it like that? If you, for some aspects, if you speak to a boat designer, he wouldn't ask why do you do it like that, but they challenge you, and then you have to rethink and explain why is it like that. And in most of the cases, the opinion doesn't change, but there were cases where we said, yeah, it's true. Why are we doing like that?
Martin, we first saw foiling in San Francisco and then Bermuda and latterly obviously in Auckland. I mean, all relatively flat water, somewhat protected competition areas in comparison to what we see in Barcelona. I mean, how have the conditions in Barcelona affected the design approach?
That's probably the most important aspect, or the biggest difference between Auckland here. The waves are definitely way bigger. Even in light winds, we have swell and we have waves much bigger than what we have seen, or what we saw in Auckland, and that has influenced the design of the boats a lot, especially the foil design, but also the hull design. I would say every aspect of it. We have to deal with these waves, and we need a setup that is more forgiving than what we had in Auckland. So, in short, conditions that were considered unsailable in Auckland are normal in Barcelona.
Let's get a bit more in depth on the foils. I mean, we're seeing very different looking foils this time. I mean, I know this is a very specialist subject of yours, Martin, but just explain, the size rule has changed slightly, but just describe the new look to the foils here and what we're seeing in these newer shapes.
So what we see is, I actually would say the foils are probably one of the areas where we see some convergence, because all the teams have more or less a T-foil. Yeah, so last time we saw several teams with anhedral foils, Luna Rossa and the British team, and also the American team. Actually, only Team New Zealand had a T-foil last time. This time, all the teams move or went towards more or less a T-foil. That means the angle between the vertical strut and the foil itself is more or less 90 degrees. And that's driven to a large extent by the waves, because if you have an angle, it's more difficult to pierce, and the risk of ventilation is higher. So this T-foil is something that we observe with all the teams. And then we see also that all the teams went for relatively small foils with a pretty triangular shape. Yeah, if you look at the plan form, it's more in many cases more triangular than what we saw last time, and that is driven by the structure. So this time the span is wider, and we are really hitting the structural limits with the foils. We are hitting the structural limits in order to deal with that, to be able to have a small foil with a maximum span. We go for a more triangular shape, which is not necessarily optimal in terms of drag, but if you take the structure into account, into that whole thing, then this is the way to go, and it seems that all the teams went into that direction.
They all reached the same conclusion.
Yeah, more or less. Of course, there are differences. There are small differences, or there are differences, but the main design direction, I think, is similar for all the teams.
You've been involved in the Cup a long time, Martin. When you look at what you've created, at the boats that are now zipping around off Barcelona, what do you think? How advanced are they? How extraordinary are they?
I think they're pretty special. Yeah, it shows. So even for people who are not involved in sailing, they can see that this is not normal. Yeah, to see such a big boat, 20 meters long, flying over the water at 70, 80, sometimes 90 kilometers an hour. That's quite amazing. So the weight of these boats, that's like a small truck. Yes, around 7 tons. So these smaller trucks on the highway, that's more or less the same amount of energy what we see there. So 7.5 tons or so at 80 kilometers an hour. That's flying across the water. That's quite special. And then controlling that, and that's really complex. And from outside it doesn't show, but the sailors, they do such a difficult job there to keep this thing in that position and really at 20 centimeters above the waterline. From outside it looks easy, but it's not, and the speeds are just unbelievable. Upwind, we are reaching 40 knots now. That was even 10 years ago, that was unthinkable.
Martin Fischer, we can't wait. We wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Martin Fischer, again, a slightly abbreviated version of my original interview. For me, Martin is one of the most fascinating people to talk to in this design environment. So, as always, Martin, a very special thanks. My next guest is making his first appearance on the podcast, but even his introduction could fill an entire edition, so I'll keep it brief. But in the world of sailing, there's not much Bruno Dubois hasn't done. A sailmaker by trade, he was part of France's Arriva Challenge back in 2007, a team run by Stéphane Candler, the man making his return to the Cup arena with this new French challenger. Bruno has been involved in successful sailing campaigns across the entire sport, but was last involved in the Cup with Frank Camas back in Bermuda in 2017. Orient Express Racing Team has been built around the talented French Sail GP team, a team that is also managed by Bruno. And although they were the last team to launch their AC75, they're confident that they'll be well amongst the points as the Challenger Series gets underway. Bruno Dubois, CEO of Orient Express Racing Team, a very busy man, so thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Bruno, it's been an amazing few months, hasn't it? I mean, the boats arrived, you had a wonderful launch event, the AC75 has been out sailing, the team are really getting into throwing it around the racecourse out there. I mean, how exciting has this past couple of months been?
Well, it's for sure it's very exciting because you can see all your work over the past years, taking shape and looking at the crew, the shore crew. Everybody is really fully into it. It's the first time I really see such a big, because we're about 120 people here, and I can see so many people fully into that, and everything is dedicated to the boat. That's quite amazing. And also the sailors and the cyclists, everybody is on focus on the boat, which is great, I think.
Yeah, it's a good atmosphere. I mean, personally, you're not new to the Cup, Bruno. You ran the Groupama campaign back for Bermuda. I mean, what brought you back into the Cup arena? Why get stuck into this crazy circus again?
Well, it's for people of my age, we've been through Volvo Ocean Race Cup, we did that, and it's quite interesting. And for me, it's just because I said that a few times. I saw Stéphane after the last Cup, and watching, the Cup when you were on a thing with Nathan and Kenny Reid, and he was listening to that and making comments. And I said, what's happening? And he said, I would like to go back, but I cannot go back. I don't want to go back alone. And I said, okay. So, and he asked me, he said, what do you think about we go together on this kind of thing? I said, it's amazing. So it's almost 3 years now, and it's an amazing adventure because we link also our team to SailGP. The same sailors, same team, same technical people. So it's like a full time for the last, I would say, 2 years, where not night and day, but I mean like 7 days a week, like the full team is together. And that's one good thing, I think, for the Cup. I don't know if we're up to where we're gonna go. I wish we go up to the end, but I know that the solution is also the fact that we all work together all the time. That's a good thing, I think.
We should probably introduce Stefan Candler. I mean, he's your partner in crime in this whole thing, but he also has a background in the Cup.
Yeah, Stefan was the owner of Arriva Challenge in 2007. We sailed together before that, I think in 2000, and I made sales. In fact, when I worked at North Sales, I made sales for his dad, Ortwin Candler. And that's how I met Stefan. And then later, Stefan took over the campaign for the America's Cup. And then after that, he took the vineyard, took over the vineyard of the family vineyard. He bought a second one, and he was running that. So it seems like everything is running fine, and he was looking for a new challenge. And I think his dad, is probably really proud of him, of what he's pushing, because Stefan works on the sponsorship, marketing, and communication. I run more the sailing team of the other part, and I'm quite often here, more often in a team base than he is. And Stefan it's amazing how, he managed to get those brands like L'Oréal, like Orient Express and Alpine, and convince them to go into sailing, and really hope that they're going to carry on for a while, because I think they're convinced it's a good support.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really promising. Massive French brands, as you said. Obviously, the last Cup was in New Zealand, and before that, Bermuda, San Francisco, but now back in Europe. And as a team CEO, how big a deal is it to have the Cup here in Europe?
It's essential. I don't know if we could have made it if it was in New Zealand, honestly, for the sponsor. The fact that it's in Barcelona, the fact that it's so close to France, it's easier technically with us. We built a boat in Multiplace. It was easier because we didn't start. Well, we start pretty much in the same time as everybody, but we were slow to start because, to go full on, you need money, and we didn't have the full backing at that time. But no, I think Barcelona. I think it's good for everybody. It's good for the Spanish. It's good for the Italian. It's good. It's good for the Brit also. I think it's amazing, and there will be a lot of support. I'm sure there's a lot of people coming and watch the America's Cup here.
All right, let's talk a bit about the team. Firstly, the boat. You went with a design package from Team New Zealand. Just explain that. What did they provide, and why make that decision?
Well, we're not going to go into detail of what we received. Okay, I've been in trouble enough by doing this. But when we start, there's two things I ask Stefan and say, look, first of all, I would like to make sure we can link to SailGP with the sailors, because it's the same communication, the same speed, the same sailors overall, with Ben, Jimmy, and Tom, and Nathan, and Pete and Blair. So it was the good circuit to go. And then the second thing, I said, look, we don't have the resource to get all the good French designer back to France right now. They're all gone already. We cannot, if we do it, we're going to do another French project where we're going to be late, we're not going to have enough money, and we need at least 35 to 40 designers to do a proper job, at least to start with. When you look at GBR, how many designers they have with the link in Mercedes and INEOS, so it's impossible. And we're going to be slow, and this is not going to work. Both of us, we have a long time relationship with Grant Dalton. We know each other. For me, it's go back to Fish and Paykel in the Whitbread. So we know each other we had our up and down moment where I disagree with what he was doing, and probably he disagreed too with what I did. But Stefan bought already a boat from Team New Zealand in 2007, and he helped Team New Zealand at that time. It was quite hard for them at that time. So I think the relationship is there. There's a long-time relationship. And we called them and said, look, would you have a design package? And they say, yes, fine. And then at the end, they basically said, look, we were planning to buy the boat number 2, their boat number 2 design, and his grand who came one day and said, well, why you go to number 2 when you could have number 3? But you're going to have to wait a little bit more because we're not ready. And then that's how we end up having the same boat than them. So it's late, but at least we have the latest of the latest from Team New Zealand.
I mean, do you have the actual, sister of the Team New Zealand
yeah,
boat? Do you
we
believe
have.
that?
Yes, we have. But when you look at the foil, you could see that we don't have the same foil. There's a couple of things that we knew that we would have let's say the 2.9, and they have the 3. Maybe the same in the system, maybe the same in other things, but it's really close when you look at the boat. The hull, it's clear, you look at the hull, is exactly the same hull. And it would have been complicated for them to design one system for us and then design a different system for them. I think they optimized some stuff probably for them. I have no idea on that. One thing for sure is that it helped us to understand very quickly those very complicated machines. And that's the problem also by doing this is that we are discovering the problem, discovering the system by having problem. When everything goes well, you don't know what is behind the systems, but when, it stops and it's not working, then you have to go inside and understand everything. And this is how, and now looking backward, I wish we would have launched the boat 1st of April, for example, instead of June or May, end of May, but that's the same for everybody, I guess.
I mean, you personally have been involved in some pretty complex race boats. I mean, they are off the scale, aren't they, in comparison, in terms of complexity?
There's nothing really compared to those boats. Those boats are, I think we're closer to the F-16 flight than a boat, or even it's Formula One. I would say it's quite amazing. It's a mix between the two. I think when I look at a jet and a Formula One, I think that's what we have. And we had Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly here a few weeks ago, and they were amazed and shocked. They said, "Look, you guys are in a different planet with that," and that's great. I think it's a great compliment from people coming from Formula One, I think.
Yeah, it's a proper reality check. And what about your team, Bruno? I mean, very talented young sailors. They get amongst it, don't they, in Sail GP? Quentin Delapierre, Kevin Peppeney, Youth America's Cup winner Jason Saunders, and a massively experienced Mathieu Van Dam. I mean, how do you think they're going to go in the pressure of the Cup?
I don't know how they're going to do it, but what I've done to make sure it will go smooth is, I remember the first day Quentin came into Sail GP. He came into a media room. I forgot, it was in Cadiz. And Tom Slingsby was there, Jimmy Spithill, Nathan. He came in, he knew those people a little bit, but then, Tom and Jimmy were idol for him. And then Ben Ainsley came to me. I was outside of the room and said, "Look, how do you pronounce his name?" I say, "Quentin." "Okay, Quentin." He went straight to him, and Quentin was like frozen. He looked at him and said, "Oh my God, this is my, the guy that, Quentin was looking at all the time before when he was sailing." And then Ben, the way he is, very polite, he went to shake his hand and everything. And I realized that this emotion is gone now. He's at the start with Jimmy Spithill on one side, Tom Slingsby on the other side, or Pete Burling. He doesn't care at all. He will push them. And when you look at the start on Sail GP, we're not bad so far in the way. He's not afraid to cross the fleet, go underneath full bond, and be the first one on M1. And that's exactly what I want. I want him to look at Ben and say, "Look, Ben, you're amazing, but I'm not afraid of you at the start." But if we didn't do that, imagine now and say, "Okay, now I'm 30, I'm going to sail against those guys, we're going to be killed." So I think for that's what I prepare to make sure that he's okay at the start.
My favourite photograph, the still image of this Cup so far has been after your first day of sailing. And there's a shot of Quentin looking at Kevin, and he has the biggest grin. He is laughing. It is so good. I mean, they are having the best time. Bruno, you are a new team, as we've talked about, and up against some very established, very experienced challengers. I mean, what would success look like for you in 2024? I mean, what's your expectations in it all?
For me, I think success would be to be in a final against Team New Zealand. Honestly, that would be the two similar boats like that. It would be amazing. And after that, only the sky is the limit for us. We know we have a pretty good boat. Do we have enough time to get ready the same as the other one? I can see that it's going to be on reliability, I think. We don't know yet how the other boats are. We know one thing is we don't have a lemon. That's for sure. So for me, I say to the guys all the time, only the sky is the limit. Let's go up to the end. With no pressure, honestly. Our sponsor do not put pressure on us. We're here to build on the future also, because now we know that with this kind of package, this team base that we put together, everybody who come in this team base say, look, wow, this is a proper, team base with a proper, technical service around. It's not just a camp for the summer. So we know we have something for the future, and we have young sailors. I think it's good for the future too.
I've been thinking, Bruno, in my career as a broadcaster, I'm fairly sure I've spent more time reporting on sailing from France than from any other nation. Vendée Globes, Route de Rums, TJVs, Jules Verne attempts, the Tour de France à la voile, Olympics, countless visits to Britannia. I mean, sailing is such a massive sport at home, isn't it? I mean, why do you think no French team to date has ever won the America's Cup or even really come close?
Yeah, what about I ask you the same question? Why nobody from England managed to win the Vendée Globe? It's just because, I don't know, it's the 13th time that we go into the Cup. I have no idea. I know one thing now is that, we sign up a contract with Lorient. We're going to bring the team and the base here in Lorient. We're going to be in a center where the offshore technology is. And we're going to try to make the link between all those classes and the America's Cup. And I think there's a pride also of this region where we will not be competing against another IMOCA or another team and everything. We'll say, this is the Cup. Can we all together bring something to, and that will be amazing for the future. I don't know why we didn't win. I think it's typical of France. We depend on sponsor. The sponsor, they do not put money 4 years before an event. They come before the event. You need a billionaire for that. So if you come with money, so you're late. All the very good designers, you look at every single team, they have French engineers. But those guys are gone already. When we start to have money, they are gone already. Or when the Cup is over, we shut down everything for a year. They're all gone. We are not able to give a retainer to people. So that's what we are trying to work on with Stéphane and the other team, the management team, and with Frank Camas, who is part of our design team, is to find pathway for our team for the future. So, for example, the shore crew could be involved in an offshore project, for example, and building a IMOCA in the future. Why not? The design team could be involved in something, and the sailing team could continue on SailGP. If we manage to get that, the future for the America's Cup for France is amazing. But if we have to stop and restart again, there's no hope, and that's what happened all the time. So we know the key, and we just need to find the cash to make sure we can continue properly. But it looks promising the way we are with the team.
Perhaps just give us an idea of that. I mean, it is an extraordinary amount of money, isn't it, to run an America's Cup campaign? Even doing it like you are, you haven't got. You haven't got 50 designers that you're paying for, but just sort of maybe just give us a glimpse into that in comparison to other things that you've run.
Well, Compared to the other teams or compared to the other projects?
Within the sport, yeah.
I know in sport there's nothing compare to the America's Cup in total prize, because we are 120 people. That's where the money is, and then if you take another 50 people for the design team, it's going to be even more, And when you look at now, there are teams like I look at a team that I find really efficient. Two teams I find very efficient is Luna Rossa and Team New Zealand. They've been there forever. They have the base, they have the container, they have the tools, they have the rib, they have everything. When they restart, the pump is already running. They have done it already. And it's easier because they know how to do it, they know the system, everything. Here we start really from scratch with nothing. And that's, but compared to other projects like the Volvo Ocean Race or an Ultime or IMOCA, this is like Paris-Dakar versus Formula One.
Yeah, it's off the scale.
Yeah.
It is, though, an amazing time to be a French sailing fan. At a home Olympics just about to kick off, an incredibly strong Olympic sailing team with really high expectations, and then straight into the Challenger Series. I mean, how much support are you expecting? How big will this challenge be at home as momentum starts to get underway?
Well, we have an amazing broadcast, like followers and everything. So I'm sure it will be amazing. It's difficult when you are in Barcelona to find out exactly how it is at home, but they are there. There's a lot of people following us, and the newspaper is so close. They're all going to come, and the fact that we have partners like the Accor Group and L'Oréal and Alpine, they're going to bring more journalists. This week with Kawe, one of our, the clothing brand who support us, they had journalists, but none of them follow sailing. They're all from Vogue, from JQ, and that's what's going to make the team, more popular.
Realistically, Bruno, I mean, do you think this team can win the America's Cup?
I think so. I think there's so many things we still have to do, but yes, we can do it. We can do it. Doing it next week, next month, I don't know, because I think the roads, I don't want to go quicker than what we should. But long term, if we can do, I would say the 38, yes, we could win the 38. I feel really confident that the 38 could be done for France.
Bruno, congratulations for making all this happen, and thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure.
Sorry, it's really hot here.
It is quite hot and a little
terrible.
Noisy, but we made the best of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Shirley.
I cannot wait to see the French team crossing the start line and getting amongst it as the Challenger Series gets underway. They're a confident bunch, as you've heard, but their sailing team is bristling with talent. It's a busy world, the America's Cup, but Bruno Dubras must be one of the busiest men in the sport. So Bruno, many, many thanks for taking time out to talk. My next guest is no stranger to the Cup. He's won it with Oracle Team USA. He's also no stranger to the podcast. He's made several appearances over the years, in part because he sits at the real pinnacle of competitive sailing. 3 times Sail GP winner, Olympic gold medalist, multiple World Sailor of the Year, and an Aussie with an American passport. That means Tom Slingsby qualifies to race for the New York Yacht Club's American Magic, where he drives as one of the 2 helms on board their AC-75. I caught up with Tom just before the team started their July the 4th celebrations at the team base, after a stellar day out on the water. Tom Slingsby, thanks for joining us. It's been about 6 months, I think, since we sat in this very special sound room that you have here, and you last spoke on the podcast. And it's fair to say there's been quite a lot going on.
Yeah, it's been very busy here at American Magic. Yeah, since then we've launched Patriot, the new Patriot. Plenty of hard work from our builders and shore teams and designers, everyone involved in getting that launched. And Since then, yeah, as when you launch a new boat in the Cup, you kind of say, okay, there goes your weekends and there goes your night times, because you're going to be at the base a lot more, and it has been very busy. And add on top of that, coming to the end of Sail GP, it's been a hectic time lately.
Yeah, for our listeners who follow you on social media, yeah, father, new baby, congratulations, yes. And plenty of action and controversy on Sail GP.
Yes, there always is. Sail GP loves the drama, as everyone knows.
You're also just in off the water. I mean, a glorious day here in Barcelona, perfect summer day. How is the new boat performing, and how does this period work? I mean, are you just every day pushing it all a little bit harder? You know, how do you get through this period?
Yeah, I guess we've learnt a lot about the boat, but we're still learning. We've just gone through a modification of the boat, and people with a sharp eye will see we've essentially increased the bustle, and we've got a bit of a skeg on the boat. We felt that the light air performance of the boat was really good. It was actually exceeding expectations. We were doing some self takeoffs at that 6 knot mark, and a couple actually even just below that. And so it's a tough one, but we've decided to add a bit of a skeg, which helps the hull seal to the water, but it adds drag. And so, yeah, we've decided to take away potentially a bit of our light air takeoff ability to potentially gain a little bit more sealing the hull to the water, and potentially a few metres a minute gain is what the design tools say.
It's such a tricky compromise, isn't it? Because actually conditions here are tricky. I mean, everyone's talked about the sea state, and also roll the clock forward. It's not always as perfect as it is today later on in the year. You know, it's hard to make those decisions.
Really hard to make those decisions. I guess like we really designed and built Patriot to be, I guess the goal was really from 6.5 to 10 knots was its target. And the boat really has sort of exceeded expectations. I think we were thinking the boat might take off at about 6.5 knots, but we've found that we might be getting a little under that. So, yeah, we said, okay, racing doesn't start till 6.5 knots is where the minimum speed is. So we said, okay, well, you take a bit of that gain that we have there and trying to convert it into a bit more boat speed. So, yeah, it's nice to be in that position where we feel we can actually speed up the platform because our takeoff is nice. And, yeah, overall, we are pretty happy with where we're at. We don't know really who's quick yet and who's not, but when we're sailing around by ourselves, on our tools, on our design numbers, our boat's performing right where we want it to.
The pooled recon is actually just stopped, I think, was it last week or the week before? But I'm sure all teams managed to extract, quite a lot of information about the competition. I mean, what do you think? What does your team think about the opposition's offerings?
It's really interesting. I was surprised to see the difference in the designs of the boats, and I think that's exciting. But for all the spectators and all the fans, it really so far looks to me like it's very similar between the boats. You give edges here and there. We haven't seen Team New Zealand. We haven't seen them go near another boat, and so we don't know, could they blow us all out of the water? They've just launched with very, very small foils, which relative to the other teams, which make you think they're very confident in their light air takeoff, and that their small foils are going to give them an advantage against the other teams. That's interesting. Team New Zealand doing what Team New Zealand does. They seem to throw the ball a long way and just see if they can catch it and work it out, figure out how to sail and adapt to these super fast designs, and it'll be really interesting. To me, they're a bit of an outlier, even though they're very similar to the French. Obviously, the foils, what they've done there, it's very ambitious going that smaller foil. They've got to figure out a way to take that boat off in 6.5, 7 knots, and if they can, and stay on the foils when it gets around that wind as well. It's my hat's off to them, because we think our foil size is working about right, but yeah, they've got different design tools and different philosophies. So I think they're the most interesting for me. The other teams, we all seem quite similar, at least in our crossing tacks that we do. Luna Rossa, to me, look very slick. Their boat handling looks good. Their flight stability looks great. Manoeuvres look really good. And they seem to be pretty fast across the board. It's hard to see many weaknesses there. Alinghi haven't got too much of a read on. I kind of feel like them and INEOS are pretty similar in one way, just from looking at them. They're quite different hull designs and very different philosophy to, I guess, us and Luna Rossa. Not really sure, but for me, when everything connects up, obviously you've got INEOS and a very big hull, and you've got Alinghi, quite a big hull, especially compared to us. But when all the flows line up and they're at the right apparent wind that the boat's designed for, they seem very fast. Whether they pay a penalty when the wind conditions get a bit flaky and up and down pressure, shifty, different wind shears, and the hull and everything isn't lining up exactly as their aero model say it will. That'll be interesting if they've still got that same boat speed. So, and then the French, obviously they're going to have a fast boat, but I see them out there every day improving very quickly. Their boat handlings come together really fast. So we know if they can get the boat handling down and manoeuvres, they'll be a fast boat.
I'm sure the other teams will have been checking out your cyclor arrangement. I mean, you've taken a bit of a different approach, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. I mean, I guess the cat's out of the bag now. You can totally talk about it. But we found that we were able to get a much lower volume hull by going recumbent cyclists and bringing everyone down. The papers we read were it was going to be a 10% power loss to go recumbent cyclist versus upright. I guess, and I don't know how these studies were done, but it was probably done with cyclists jumping onto a recumbent for the first time, potentially. But most of our cyclists are actually rowers, and when they jumped on the recumbent, it seemed like a pretty similar position to what they're used to, and those numbers were quite a bit less. And then when they were training a lot of the time, just recumbent only for 6-7 months, doing 5 hours a day, their numbers are exceeding their upright cycling scores. So we feel we're very similar to the upright cyclists in power. We feel we might have made a little gain in aerodynamics there by getting such a low volume hull. Time will tell. I mean, everyone's looked at this option and 5 other teams went away from it. So we could be missing something. But as I said, we're pretty happy with our decisions so far, but we'll have to wait until race 1 if we made the right decision or not.
I can't imagine you've come from Olympic rowing or something and you're now facing backwards on a flying machine at 50 knots. It's mad.
It is, and oh God, our guys are so funny. Obviously they're facing backwards and below the deck level, but when a boat crosses behind us and they see a rig fly by doing 45 knots or 50 knots, they all just like, oh, did you see that? Was that Team New Zealand? Who was that? And they're loving the experience, and they're a great addition to our team. They bring a sort of fresh look at it all and a real enthusiasm, and to us guys who have done a few cup campaigns, and it's a joy having them out there with us.
Yeah, that's good news. And they're used to hard work, rowers. They put in the hours, that's for sure. Yeah. You've missed the previous campaign in Auckland, Tom, so I'm quite curious that you've gone straight into version 3 AC75. I mean, how does an AC75 sit performance-wise with the trusty F50 you sail on SailGP, and how is it jumping from one to the other week after week?
It's I guess on the performance side, these boats are the fastest sailing boats in the world by far now. I think maybe last campaign you could argue that the F50 would stand a pretty good chance sub 10 knots. I know I've sailed Patriot version 2, which basically didn't take off under 10 knots. 10 knots of wind speed, and so you needed 10 knots to get in the air, and then it would go pretty quick once it was up. But now we can take off around 6 knots of wind. So the new version 3 of the AC75, it's lighter, the foils span is larger. People have clued onto a few loopholes in the rules where you can put the mast ball higher than the deck level and gain some extra area at the bottom of the sail. The bustles, obviously, that Team New Zealand sort of pioneered in the last campaign have showed that as you build speed through 8, 10, 12, 14 knots before you take off, you can actually slowly lose wetted area as the boat starts coming up slowly instead of a flatter boat that's in or out. So these developments have made the boats much faster in the light airs, and then when it's uprange, when we're sailing in 20 knots, we're sitting well into the 40 knots upwind at about a true wind angle of 40. Your VMG is well over 30 knots, so if you're in a chase boat going directly into the wind at 30 knots, you'll still struggle to keep up with us. So that's the boats are unbelievable, and yeah, they'll leave any other boat in the world, including all the foiling ones, in their wake now.
I mean, they look sort of computer generated. I've just been here all week watching everyone out training. The speed is phenomenal, like a speedboat speed. It's unbelievable to watch. On the AC75, your twin helms, of course, the Italians started it in Auckland, and everyone's on it now. You know, a lot's been made of your relationship with your co-helm, Paul Goodison, Goody, rivals, of course, way back at the London Olympics in the laser. You know, how is all that going? And talk to me about that relationship. I mean, it's so critical.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, we're up against a few teams that have sailed together for a long time. And I guess me joining American Magic, and we've got a lot of new people here, different from the last campaign. It was almost like starting fresh and a clean slate. And yeah, it's obviously going to be hard coming up against the likes of Team New Zealand and INEOS and Luna Rossa, who have had these teams which are the same people, same roles for a long time now. So it is going to be hard for us for sure. And it's one thing sort of learning the comms and understanding each other, but it's another thing going into battle with your teammates. Our American Magic team here that we're going to be hitting the water with, we've never raced with the cyclists. We've done the AC40 racing, and we've never raced another team with our full 8-man squad. But then even our 4-man team, we've done 2 regattas that actually count in the 2 AC40 World Series events. And our next one will be race 1 of the round robin in where all the points count in the match. So that's something you can't shortcut. It's obviously, it's tough, but I feel like we're starting to gel now. You go through highs and lows along this journey and wondering if we're all going to get on the same page or not, but it's been a great job by everyone, and the coaches and Terry and the sailors themselves, just sort of at learning, adapting and being open to changing the way they communicate, the way they might have communicated for 30 years because it wasn't fitting in and gelling the right way. So it's been a real challenge, but it's been really good, and I do still get caught out. We've got a playbook here at American Magic, and then I go race in the F50 and I say flip-flop here, and my Aussie mates say, what the hell is a flip-flop? And so different code names for everything. It does get hard switching, but...
Tell us a few the listener can listen out for the America's Cup.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're all, a lot of them are very similar, and yeah, I guess you'll hear it on a lot of boats, but there's a few different names of playbook manoeuvres that basically if you've made a mistake in the past in previous America's Cups, it seems like you get a playbook named after you, and yeah, one is the JK from 2013, which was a failed bottom mark tack, and then another one is close to this team is the Dino, which is a top mark tack bear away. Poor Dean Barker, apparently he's heard about this and he finds the humour in it all. So the goal is to finish your America's Cup
without a JK or a
career
Dino.
without something named after you. Because usually it's not for good reasons. So I hope there's no slingers or slingsbys after this campaign.
It is, comms on any boat is a challenge. It's always something, isn't it, that you're working on. But it's going to be so crucial here, that trust between, the port and starboard side. I mean, often your whole vision of, a 180 vision is coming from someone else. How do you finesse that? Give us a little bit of a glimpse into, how you keep moving that forward.
Yeah, so essentially from the forestay to the rudder post at the back of the boat, I'm on the starboard side, I can't see anything to the left of the forestay. So if there is a boat out that side, I'm completely reliant on Goody painting a picture of where he is. And so we've come up with different terminology. So as we come out of attack, the leeward helm spots the other boat and says, okay, he's tacked, he's now on starboard coming at you. Inner section is in 20 seconds, looking like we are bow forward, potential cross. Things like this, you've really got to paint the picture and for that person. So if I'm steering and Goody's explaining, through his words that he's saying, I can basically put them on a map where they are, and then I can mode the boat a little differently. If he says, okay, very tight, I don't think they're going to cross, it's going to be close, I'm going to be probably looking to build speed and sail a touch higher groove to not let them cross us and make them do a duck. And then, vice versa. It might be a lee bow tack. We had a lee bow tack today where we were doing a crossing drill, not a drill, but we were doing crossing with INEOS, and they were apparently sticking lee bow tacks underneath us by about 10 metres. And at one point, apparently, our foils overlapped each other. And I actually never saw them. I saw at one point the windward foil just pop out on the windward side of the forestay. But to think you're that close to a boat, a 75-foot yacht, and you don't have a glimpse of them, you're completely reliant on your opposite helm.
How do you share decision making? How does that work?
Decision making really is done because you've got such lack of vision. You've got to trust your co-helm, and basically to the left of the forestay, Goody's calling, okay, we can cross here, and basically I put he might say to me, what side do you like up the course? Do you like the left or the right? And I'll say, I like the right, and he said, okay, I think we can stick a lee bow tack on them here, and or we might just lee bow them and lead them back to the right. If I say I want the left, he would say, okay, copy, we'll just cross them here. But the leeward helm is the one ultimately making the decision of what the manoeuvre will be because he's got eyes on the other boat.
Oh, I look forward to all those comms. Love all that. Just lastly, how intense is this period, this final run-in? I mean, you've been here before, a month or two out from a cup. I mean, you're older now, though, perhaps a few more distractions away from the water than you had before. I mean, it's still intense, though, isn't it, as this ramps up? And you've won the cup before and lost it. How pivotal is this period, and what's it like inside?
Yeah, I mean, if I think back to my two previous cups, a month or two out from the America's Cup in 2013, we were knots and knots slower than Team New Zealand. We still couldn't foil jibe. There was no foil tacking back then. We weren't foiling upwind. And we managed to win that cup. Fast forward to 2017, 2 months out from the cup, we at Oracle Team USA, we were very happy. We actually did the preliminary regatta against all the teams. We beat Team New Zealand 2-0 in the preliminary races. We won that series. We were extremely confident, and we lost that series, the America's Cup 7-1. All that tells me is the game is going to change so much, and you need to be versatile. You need to be able to adapt. The game is not over until the final race is finished, and it's the team that can adapt the best and really keep an open mind is going to be very strong. But looking at this cup right now, I think starting is going to be everything. I think if you win, I think right now I could say this, this is my guess, I'm obviously guessing, but if we won 100% of our pre-starts and came off the line and won the first cross each start, we will win the America's Cup. So for me, that puts a lot of pressure on myself, but I enjoy that, but I've got to do a really good job of starting. I don't think there's going to be a big enough speed difference between the boats where you can lose a start and sail around the other boat like the past America's Cup. I think the boats are going to be closer now. I think there will be speed differences, but it's not going to be enough to get through bad air of a boat ahead of you. So that's exciting for me. It means that essentially, if I'm right, 2 months out right now, if I'm right, it's a Sailors America's Cup and the ball's in our court and the designers have all done an amazing job and it's not going to be a whitewash. So to me, that's really exciting and motivating, and I've got to go to San Francisco next week and get that out of the way and try to get a little bit of confidence up against the Kiwis there, and then come back here to America Magic and head down and a real 2-month push to be the best I can be personally and be the best we can be as a team.
Lots to look forward to. Tom Slingsby, thank you so much for your time and best of luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Tom Slingsby giving us a brief look at life in Barcelona as an America's Cup helm. A while ago on the podcast, American Magic were one of the teams we devoted an entire edition to. So give that a listen if you haven't already done so. But also spin back to the start of Series 4 and you can catch Tom's entire sailing story. It really is a great listen. So Tom, once again, many, many thanks for your time. Our final guest comes from a team we've also devoted an entire podcast edition to, returning Swiss double cup winners, Alinghi Red Bull Racing. And as a team cycler, Barnaby de Lars is himself a 2-time Olympian, a World Cup winner, and the winner of a sporting trophy even older than the America's Cup. If you're really into your sailing, his name may be new to you because Barnaby de Lars is an Olympic rower. He's one of a legion of world-class rowers drawn to the Cup through the rule change for this edition that sees cyclers pedal-powered, hydraulic-powered generators back into the Cup. 4 in each boat. Their role is to power the hydraulic systems that power the AC-75s above the waterline control systems. I caught up with Barnaby at Alinghi Red Bull Racing's very smart base in the marina in Barcelona. Barnaby de Lars, the first Olympic rower to join us on the podcast. A very big welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. How are things going in Barcelona? You've got a magnificent base right in the middle of an amazing city. It's quite a long way from rowing, isn't it?
For sure. And that was definitely one of the, aspects of the argument for me to come here. See something different, see a new city, different life. And I absolutely love the city. Really fell in love with it. And also, having to tackle a new adventure, a new challenge with the America's Cup. Pretty exciting.
First off, Barnaby, you're obviously here as a cycler. You were with Swiss Rowing. How did you make the switch? How did all that happen?
Everyone is curious about that. So first of all, we're not the first rowers to do that. Rob Waddell back in 2007, if I'm right, he won the Olympics in rowing and then went to the America's Cup and went back to the Olympics after that, actually. And now across all 6 teams, we are about 20 ex-rowers, around 3-4 guys per team. So very popular choice this year. I think it's even more the case because of how the sport changed and evolved this time around with the cyclers, with the reduced number of sailors on the boat, with the different way to power the boats. Most teams use their legs now, so all teams from what we saw. So people that, well, you probably know a bit better in in the UK or in New Zealand how rowing works, but most people think it's with our arms, which is not the case at all. It's mainly leg driven, so 70% of the effort comes from our legs. So it's quite easy for us to transition on the bike. Of course, we big heavy guys, so if we go up on a hill, we don't stand a chance against the cyclists. But on the water, the weight doesn't matter. In fact, with the crew average, we need some heavier guys to compensate for the tremors in the helmsman. So yeah, rowing was a popular choice. We did some testing. I finished my Olympics in Tokyo. Went to study in the UK, and didn't know what I was going to do. Going back to rowing, not going back. But pretty early on, I got a call from the coach here, and wasn't an easy choice because it's life changing. But I thought it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I said yes.
Give us a little glimpse into that world. And I know you probably won't give us specific numbers, but a lot of our listeners will measure power output on their bike and record all their rides on Strava and everything. Where are we in terms of delivering power?
Well, for anything from 3 minutes to a few hours, we can deliver similar power or even more than top 20 at the Tour de France. If people are into cycling, they would probably know what that means.
And is the power demand, is it just constant, or is there bursts? I mean, how does that roll?
Yes, for sure. There's some bursts. It's not a constant effort. We do some testing indoors where we do some constant efforts, 20 minutes time trial, 12 minutes, stuff like that. But on the boat, you can imagine that it's not the case, because everyone who has been in the boat, it's still the same or similar principle than it was in the old days, where, well, when you have a maneuver, you have to trim the sails. So, and when you go in straight line, there's not much happening. So, similar for us. With the system we have, we managed to flatten it out a bit, but we still have some big bursts in the maneuvers, and we can take it a bit easier during the straight lines. Of course, it depends on the wind and how the guys are sailing, but yeah.
I've got to talk a little bit more about rowing. Barnaby, you've also won one of the other oldest trophies in sport, haven't you? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's actually older than the Cup, but it's not international, technically speaking. So, the boat race, when I said I was doing I did a master in the UK that was in Oxford. So spent a year there, raced in the boat race against Cambridge, which started mid to early 19th century. So a few decades older than the Cup. And of course, that was incredible for me. As a rower, it was, it's always been a dream of mine. And I often say that the Olympics was a goal, but the boat race was a dream, because the Olympics, of course, it's super hard to get there, but it's quite simple. Like, you know what box to tick, you know what you need to do to get there. At least it's the case in rowing. So you can follow the path and you can measure yourself, but the boat race, it's from being a Swiss guy, that I was born and raised in Switzerland, never lived or studied abroad before the master. You have no idea how to get there. It's one of the most prestigious and best ranked university in the world. It's super hard academically to get an offer, and then once you get an offer, you row with people from all over the world, and you really don't know how to get there. But the main part for me was to get into university, which thankfully I managed, and then the experience was life changing as well, for me to discover all of those people. Oxford has 30,000-40,000 students from I mean, my course alone, which was an MBA, we were 300, over 70 nationalities. So from all different backgrounds, it was incredible. And then the rowing team as well, super mixed. And then racing there, you know, there's 250,000 people watching on the Thames, millions on TV, which for rowing is, I mean, I went to the Olympics twice and the most we had was probably 5,000 or 6,000 spectators. Some of the best rowers in the world went there. And you really feel like there's a community and a history or legacy. Our coach, Sean Bowden, was really into that, and he told us a lot about the history and the tradition of the race and how to race the race, how to approach it, because it's very different than what we have at the Olympics, which is, you know, Olympics and normal international racing is 2K straight, 6 boats across, and everyone is in their lane, and that's, you know, the other boat doesn't really matter that much. Whereas this one is, the boat race is 4 miles and something, I can't remember, it's 6.8 kilometers with bends, with the stream, and it's a match race as well. So the other boat is really, you know, it's not as complex than sailing, but you definitely play with the other boats and try to, you know, cut their line, or yeah, we're quite respectful, but still there's some battle going on. So different way to race it. And but yeah, for sure, the history, you feel it. We go and train in the Fleming Boathouse, which is, you know, has been there for years and years and has welcomed hundreds of other guys like us. And approaching the race, you got some alumni, some big names of the sports that come and visit us and, you know, talk with us and tell us how they won it, what step they took to win it. So yeah, it's a very big community, and once you're in for life.
It would be a remarkable feat to win both, wouldn't it? I mean, they're quite comparable in one way too, I think. You know, without really comparing getting to Oxford with winning the Challenger Series, you can't win the boat race unless you get to the university first, can you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it's a bit the same with anything. Olympics is the same. Didn't win that one, but I think I could be satisfied with the boat race and the cup if that is the case.
That'd be a pretty good haul. You were a young boy when Alinghi first won the cup in 2003. I mean, it was a massive deal at home in Switzerland. And then again, they defended it in 2007. I mean, have you got any memories of any of that?
For sure, yeah. A lot of my family friends are into sailing. I can't say for a fact I was myself when I was 7. But no, I definitely remember the buzz when they flew the boats over the lake to put it in Geneva, and it was a huge party, and the fireworks and the massive crowd welcoming the crew. And everyone knew the name of Alinghi and Ernesto Bertarelli as well. So, you know, that was, I think, that's how, of course, the team, but also him became famous. And since then, they're both, you know, a pillar of Swiss culture, I would say. And I'm sure it pushed a whole generation into sailing, which happened with me as well. I did some summer courses, you know, I got into a little bit of dinghy sailing, but not to any extent, but it got me also into sailing for a few years. And so yeah, it was a massive boost for it. I'm sure the new generation now can benefit from that.
So you had done a bit of sailing, obviously, on the lake, I'm guessing.
Yes.
I mean, what were those early days on the AC75 like?
Oh, it was easier because there's no boom. So on my last year of sailing, I broke my teeth with a boom on an Optimist. So
that's a good sign that you're too big.
Exactly. Yeah, and then I switched to laser, but wasn't good enough, I think. I mean, it's. You can ask the actual sailors as well. They will tell you it's nothing comparable. It's like driving a Citroen, a Peugeot, and then going on an F1 car. But of course, it was super impressive. The first few times we went on board, there wasn't even the cycling pods. There weren't I can't even remember if there were winches or nothing at all. We were just passengers, and so that's when we could actually see what was going on. Whereas now we a bit more heads down, but for sure it's super impressive to be there, even watching the boat at the beginning from outside. So yeah, it's nothing like we've ever seen before. But I must admit as well, you get used to it quite fast, and it becomes your job quite fast as well. So yeah, now we all used to it, and we often don't realize how impressive it is, I think.
I wanted to talk to you about this with your team, because you have over 150 days in the AC75 sailing here in Barcelona. I mean, way more than any of the other teams. And I'm guessing you may not have done every one of those, but tell me, it can get pretty rough out there. And for the cyclers, I'm guessing it can get pretty miserable, as you say, head down, pedalling away in a rolling swell. Oh, I mean, how tough can that be?
Well, I would say for us as cyclists, the ideal day is we get out on second shift. We're brought by our chase boats. We sit down, we do a little warm up, a tough race lap, and then we head back home. That's ideal. It's hard, but it's fun and it's effective. It gets tough when the day drags along because we have issues, or because we need to try stuff, or because some of the cyclers is missing and we have to do a double shift, which happens regularly for all of us. But you know, the toughest part is when it's in the winter. It's never that cold in Barcelona, but it's cold enough to get cold, and we can't really cycle with our dry suits or even wetsuits. So we usually just have some, on the layers, and if that, and maybe just some spray top on top of it. And when we are pedaling, it's fine. But when every break we get cold, and then we have to start again, and there's no actual warm up. So it's, from being freezing cold to pushing, 400, 500, 600 watts on the pedals, and repeat that all day long. So that's the rough part. The swell is fine, when you don't notice it that much on those big yachts. Whether you don't notice anything when you're falling, and even when not falling, it's quite smooth. So that's not the hard part. But the cold can be tough, or equivalently the heat. When it's really hot, it's
because you're properly encased in carbon.
Yeah, and the designers did a good job with the new pods, which is very airtight, which is great for the aero, but not so great for us in terms of heat management. But
describe what it's like doing your role on the boat. I mean, what can you see? What are you looking at? What's that like?
My hands, my forearms. No, you are pretty much heads down in the pods. If we are in the right position, there's only the top of our head and the top of our back sticking out. We have some indication on the, what we need to know, what we need to do, some of the power required, and that's about it. Of course, we can look out every now and then, but we try to avoid it as much as possible, unless it's requested for strategic reasons. But other than that, it's pretty much head down and push as hard as you can when you have to.
You're on comms though, so you can at least hear.
Yeah, which is important to know, because we can anticipate and we understand what's going on. But sometimes when it's when it gets really tough for us, and the trimmers and the helmsmen start talking with each other for some disagreement, you're just like, guys, just cut it. We can't deal with that right now.
You think you've got problems?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's funny. There are a few cyclists in the teams, but rowers, as you say, are represented among the cycler ranks far more than any other sport. What is it specifically about rollers that make them ideal for this role?
Well, I think, as I said at the beginning, we are, endurance-wise and power-wise, some of the fittest athletes out there. Something that people don't really realize, because rowing is a niche sport, but the training is incredibly hard. It's grueling. We train 3 times a day, every day, about 2 hours per session, which, cyclists train also 6-7 hours a day, but usually they do it one go. Whereas for us, the intensity is a bit higher, so you can't really do 6 hours of rowing. You need to cut it off, so it drags on all day. But at the same time, we're also quite strong in terms of power, explosiveness, and quite heavy. And so because of the rules state that we have to have a weight average within the crew, which is around 87.5 kilos, I think. And the driving group is a bit lighter than us, usually around 70 kilos. So, if you take more cyclists that are also 70 kilos, that wouldn't work. And also, it's, as we said before, it's not completely linear. So you need some spike of power, and I think rowers can repeat that quite well as well, while still sustaining a high average for a long time. So, yeah. And then the icing on the cake is that maybe they're a bit more used to the water than cyclists, but of course it's not the same water at all. But we know what a bow and a stern is, so that's a good start.
When you talk about being able to sustain spikes, I'm surprised at that. I thought cycling would have been more similar, particularly track cycling. Yes,
track cycling. But track cycling is also, you have the pure sprinters that do this efforts of less than, a minute. And those guys, they can't really, they don't have any, so they're incredible in terms of sprinting, but they don't really have any endurance, which is normal. Like if you take Usain Bolt and make him run a 1500, he wouldn't be good. And then the other guys in track cycling that do a bit longer events, they tend to come a bit closer to what we need, but again, they're usually a bit lighter and not really stronger than most rowers.
Your team suffered a bit of a setback last month, didn't they? The footage was amazing.
I was going to say that's good for the crowd.
Yeah, they did well to catch it. Were you on board when the mast broke, and how was that?
No, I wasn't on board. But of course, as you can imagine, it was the guy said it was quite scary, quite impressive, but also, everyone stayed very calm. We got a lot of experience out there, and yeah, we managed to, everyone was safe and managed to get the boat back almost in one piece.
Just lastly, Barnaby, you have competed in your sport at the very highest level and been really successful. I wonder, as the Cup fast approaches, we're only a few weeks now till it all kicks off, what do you think it's going to be like, and how are you, how much are you looking forward to actually racing against another boat?
Well, so for sure, it's going to be very different in terms of, we are the cyclers. I am a very small piece of the puzzle. So we're not going to see our impact as much as it was the case in rowing or in cycling. But I think the hardest part here, of course, it has been an incredible adventure, and I really enjoyed being here and taking part in this. But as you said, as competitors, we haven't raced in over 2 years now. So that was the toughest part for us. You train hard, you push hard for one goal, but you only have that one race 2.5 years ahead of you. So now it's finally approaching, and it's about time to feel that buzz again of the competition, and see a bit of a crowd, see the event taking place, and hopefully beating the other boats.
Just put into perspective a little bit. Could a strong cycler team win the America's Cup?
I would like to say yes, but I'm afraid no. I think we can make it lose for sure. It's a bit like a goalkeeper in football. You can't play without him, and he can't score goals, but he can definitely make the team lose. So, it's a big machine. We're over 150 people in the team. Everyone has their role to play, from designers to boat builders, helmsmen, cyclers. So it's a different approach, but for sure we need to have the standards, we need to have the physical standard and the understanding of sailing to deliver on the day, and also I don't think it's going to be necessarily the fittest cyclists that help the most, because you can also help develop the system ahead and make it more efficient. And sometimes the hydro team changing one pipe is going to save you 20%, whereas to gain 20% of fitness you need probably 20 years of training. So you have also to be smart.
Good answer. Barnaby, it's been absolutely fascinating. We wish you all the very best of luck. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Barnaby Dulars, giving us a sense at least of what life is like as an AC75 cycler. Genuinely, it's a tough job. The cyclers of this Cup seem to be training non-stop, and with the swells out of Barcelona, it's not for the faint-hearted. Barnaby, thank you for taking the time to have a chat. And for those of you wondering how the Oxford and Cambridge boat race can possibly be older than the oldest trophy in international sport, the boat race was first raced in 1829, 22 years before the America's Cup. But the boat race is only open to a team from Oxford and a team from Cambridge, making it a domestic sporting event. Old, yes, but international, no. Before we go, another quick thanks to all our guests this month and to the press officers from all the teams that helped make things work. Many, many thanks. So that's it for this month. The America's Cup will be upon us in the blink of an eye. But before it is, we're heading off to Marseille for the small matter of an Olympic sailing regatta. Watch out for that. It's easy to overdose on sport while the Games is on, but do support the sailing coverage. If you're listening from the UK, I'll be on your screens for the BBC. In a busy few weeks of sport, do make sure that you tune in. Until then, if you're enjoying what you hear, buy us a coffee. It's easy to do at buymeacoffee.com/sailing podcast, helping us bring you these uninterrupted ad-free chats from the leading lights in the sport of sailing. Before we go, a big thanks to Tim at Vertigo Films, whose tireless work and enthusiasm makes these podcasts possible. There's been a few late nights making this month's work, so Tim, a huge thanks. Keep in touch via social media. I'm Shirley Sail on Instagram and Twitter, and Shirley Robertson on Facebook. And if you're in Barcelona for the Cup, let us know what you think. I can't wait. That's all from us this month. Thank you so much for listening. Have fun on the water and sail safe, everyone.
This is Castle 1. Race officer speaking.
Lane line is on boundary up ahead, 35 seconds out.
A bit lower and faster here.
That's a good one, Jimmy.
Still gaining on the lane line there.
We're looking at 10.5 and 42. Matching him on the boundary, yeah. Copy.
This is Castle 1 standing by. Out.